The mighty English longbow, over 6 foot long, hewn from the finest materials known to man.
Or a tiny, tiny little one, like this one. Hello folks, and welcome to another Richard Head Longbows video. Longbow? Well, it is a longbow, but it's just not very long. That's because it's a child's longbow. It still has the same width-depth ratio, so therefore making it a longbow. And it's also got the Buchanan dips, so it's got a handle section and 2 independently working limbs. It's actually a triple laminate. We've got hickory on the back here and bamboo on the belly. And it's got the same handle that we put on any of our adult bows. So you've got the woolen braid and you've got the leather gold leaf trim top and bottom.
Have a look at this footage I've taken of it next to a normal bow, or an adult sized bow, which is actually a self-yew bow. You can really see that difference in the size of the handle, the size of the limbs, how much more tiny they are on that child's bow, and also through to the nocks. You can really see how dainty those Victorian nocks are, how small they are compared to an adult sized bow.
We've even managed to squeeze our name there on the back. This one has some rather nice features as well. It's actually got some original Victorian nocks made by the Pearl family. A friend of ours, who we'll talk about in the second video because this is going to be a two-parter, has done some research on the Pearl family who made bows and arrows and have factories and what have you. So these are original Victorian nocks which are unused. They made them, lots of them, and we can show you some of the collection we've got there of the various nocks that we were given direct from one of those factories before they went on to the bows. So they'd have presumably just chosen a pair that was suitable for the bow that they were making and put those on. So that's what we've done here with this child's bow. We've used some original child's bow nocks, which is rather nice. So in this series of videos I'm going to show you the making of these bows, because we've had a commission rather nicely for some little kiddies that turned up with their parents. It's rather sweet. I think they were around 2 or 3, something like that. I can't remember their ages now. So that's the videos that we're going to be doing, is showing you making a couple of these bows for those little kiddies.
As we're making bows full time, we often end up with offcuts, and what better thing to do with them? So these are the same quality materials. So I've glued up here some hickory and some lemon wood, and they're all been bound up overnight. So now I can unbind them and check that they're okay. So I'm just levering off the rubber here. It's just a inner tubing, a tyre inner tubing that we use to clamp it all together. So once I've got these undone, I can take a look and see if they're okay or not. Well, I've managed to get one of them unwrapped, and now it means I can get a closer look to make sure the adhesion is correct between the 2 laminations. Well, that's both of them unwrapped, and I can't stress how important it is to check that you have glued the laminations correctly and that they're all adhered to each other along their full length. We've done a video on laminating, and I'll put it up on the cards in the top right. Though modern glues are good, it's worth checking if you have an overhang of one of the laminations. If you have, then chop that off before you do any other work and risk having a problem. Now that we've done that, it's time to do the marking out, and one of the first things we need to do is to find our centre line. So once I've done that with the measuring, I can mark that centre line there, get the square out, draw a nice neat line across, and mark it with a C for centre, so I know which line is which. That centre line really is our jumping off point to be able to mark the rest of the bow. So now I can mark the handle. I'm doing about 1/2 inch above and about 3 inch below. Now I've marked up top and bottom, I can now get on to marking the sides. So I've put a centre line top and bottom of the handle and marked out either side of it at about 1/2 inch. I can now join up those lines, which will complete the full marking out of the handle. Now that centre line I can now use to find the centre of the ends of the bow, so that I can mark out the ends, the tip end. I'll use a piece of string, and I'll show you how I do that in the next bit of video. Now to get that straight line, we're going to use a piece of string. Just a simple loop in one end, tighten it and run it along the bow. So go from one end all the way down to the other end. Once you've got that secure, you can then start to see whether that string actually meets up with the 2 centre lines that we put onto the handle. Now you'll probably need to adjust them at either end until it does line up. You can look down the end and look on the top of the back to see whether it lines up. Once you're happy, you can then simply mark that string at either end of the bow. That will give you your centre line in comparison to the centre line that we created on the handle. Now that we have that central line at the tips, we can mark out the width of those tips either side of that central line. Now we've got all our basic marks in place, getting out the meter rule is the next step and joining all the dots up and hoping that it comes out right. If it does, it should look a little something like this. So we've joined up the handle, we've joined up the tips, we've got our centre line so that hopefully those two limbs run centrally down the back of the wood and meet up with the handle. And now it's on with the bandsaw and to start doing the cutting out. Now the whole point of finding our central lines in both the handle and at the tips is to make sure that the stave that we're cutting out is going to be straight. The laminated pieces of wood themselves may not be perfectly straight from one end to the other. So because we've created a straight line, the limbs and the handle, through what may not be a straight piece of wood, it means that some limbs are closer to the edge than the other. So as you can see here, I'm being quite careful and I'm cutting only a very small amount away because I haven't got much room between the edge of the wood and where my line starts. On the other side of the limb there, you can see there's a lot more to cut. But I'm going to cut fairly generously either side and actually do some planing after I've done the cutting out. Once I've finished cutting out down the back, this will give us our width dimensions. We obviously need to cut the depth as well, and they are basically the same measurement, so that's quite easy to do, and I'll obviously be doing that next. I will have to mark that up before I get round to doing that though. Here's what the stave looks like now that we've cut those sides off. As I said, we've left a fair amount of room there either side of those lines, so I'm going to need to use the plane now to get rid of the tool marks and get myself a little bit closer to that pencil line if we can. Okay, that's where I'm going to leave it, folks. This is part 1, and in part 2 we'll obviously have done the depth cutting, and it'll be time to do the roughing out and into the tillering and doing, well, the basic making of the bow. So if you'd like to join me next time, then please subscribe, hit the notification bell and all that other groovy stuff, and I'll see you again soon.